Hi, this video is to document the process of the T-chart for social skills, which is a GLAD strategy. This strategy comes from the focus and motivation component of GLAD, which is typically the first component that we design in a unit plan or a lesson plan. So this is, as you can see, this T-chart for social skills has already been filled out, so I'm just going to go over briefly the process used to fill this out and also the rationale. So typically GLAD utilizes anchor charts, and usually the paper is white, but for the T-chart for social skills, as you can see, the paper is yellow because the rationale is that students will easily be able to see this chart in the classroom and be able to refer to it for reminders about how to practice the social skill of focus for that instructional time period. Usually this social skill of focus will last about a month to 6 weeks during an instructional unit of GLAD, but it doesn't have to last that long. So it's really up to teacher's discretion. I recommend that a social skill focus though in this type of format, not probably be shorter than 1 week. I think that students need to have several days to look at the social skill and practice it using concrete evidence. The first thing we do is we develop a new T-chart for social skills with each class. It's important that this be a collaborative effort with students. Typically when I'm teaching elementary school, the social skill that I will focus on for the first one for the year will be active listening, because it's really important as I go over how to work with a pair in my pair share partnerships, how to talk with a small group of students, which is really an important part of GLAD as well. When we have a table team of 4 to 5 students, when we think and talk about how we're going to interact with others in that way, active listening is really important. And it's also important in a whole group setting. So that's a really good one to do at the beginning of the school year with elementary students. This is the one that we did last week because you guys are college students, and I wanted to show you the process, but at the same time I wanted to unpack a social skill that would be more relevant to you at your level of education. So we unpacked active engagement and what that looks like. So the first thing we do when we're taking participants or students through creating this chart is that we create this mind map, as you can see, and then we write this social skill of focus in the center. And then we just say to kind of do a pre-assessment or a formative assessment of what people already know about this social skill. We say, what comes to your mind when I say the social skill? So I said, what comes to your mind when I say active engagement? And then this is a really low risk opportunity for students to respond. So I turn my back, I rely on my scouts or observers, which we will look at more in upcoming weeks and practice, to manage and reinforce the positive decisions people are making during the whole group activity. And so I turn my back and I say to my students, please call out. This is a choral calling activity for low risk, high participation. So I say, just call out some ideas. What do you think of when I say active participation? And you can see that these are some responses that students in our class gave last week: attentive, sharing with peers, taking notes, eye contact, asking questions, students responding to students and adding on to ideas. These are all evidences of active engagement. As this serves as a formative assessment or pre-assessment, I actually don't have to write every student response that I hear when students call them out. Students get a chance to practice saying their ideas. They get a chance to practice their target language at that time by calling things out. But it's a low risk participation activity because I only need to write the ones that I want to have on the chart. And I might even tell students that. I might say, I don't have room to write all of your ideas on the chart. I may not catch all of them, but please just call them out. Just so that they'll know that it's not personal, and there will be many ideas that will not be recorded on the chart. All right, let's look at the bottom part of the chart. The next part of the chart involves having eyes and the word see. And we can even act that out. What do we see when people are showing active engagement? This is to set this up and help students really focus on what people would see, concrete evidences. We really want to drill down to these really discrete, specific examples of what people will see when active engagement is happening. GLAD often encourages us when we set this up to say, imagine somebody comes into our classroom, maybe it's our principal, and our principal may have just, maybe she has a cold, and so she can't really hear very well right now, but she can see us really clearly. So we're really going to ignore what she might hear or not hear and really focus on what she'll see. So these are some ideas that people in our class last week came up with. Turning our body toward a speaker. And I pointed out that the word toward is often a word that language learners and even just young children are not very familiar with. And so we oftentimes reinforce that word toward, that toward means like moving closer to something, toward. And I did a sketch here of two people turning towards one another. Anytime we can do a little sketch on our charts and reinforce the meaning visually, that really helps all of our students. All right, so another idea shared in our class was students writing. Another sketch, students gesturing with hand movements. Another sketch, playing instruments silently, because we had a student in our college group that is getting ready to be a music teacher. Following along on a table or chart or graph, and really following along on anything, I think. And facial expressions matching the conversation we're having. Like, oh my goodness, I'm so surprised. Or, really, you don't say. So these are going to be all visual evidences of that active engagement. And as that unit of study, that 1 month unit or 6 weeks or however long we're going to be focusing on this unit of study that this active engagement social skill is associated with, all during that time, we're going to be referring to this chart and these evidences. And we can even add some more paper on the bottom, because this is a living document like all GLAD charts, where throughout the unit, we might become more proficient at this idea and this concept, and we might come up with more ideas as we become more proficient. I failed to mention that before we brainstorm this idea of things, evidences that we would see when active engagement is happening, we actually want to turn and talk with a partner and generate first those ideas verbally with each other, because that lowers the risk and it increases the quality of the ideas that we will get and it lowers the risk because people get a chance to rehearse their ideas and figure out how they want to articulate them with somebody else in a much smaller setting before they share with the whole class, which is a much higher risk activity. And that risk and the idea of trying out new language and new ideas for our language learners can be really anxiety provoking at times. All right, so before we go on to our next piece, this next piece is what will we hear, and you can see the little sketch of ears here. What will we hear when we see solid evidence, specific evidence of active engagement? Before we generate this list as a whole class and write them on the yellow paper, that would be also a pair share question. Here are some ideas that people in our class gave last week. I might hear people saying, please, thank you. I might hear people paraphrasing back what they've heard. And paraphrasing is something this great, even on active listening when we do this social skill chart with elementary school students. Paraphrasing is something that often comes up, and it's a great word to teach them and a skill to teach them for effective communication. Tone of voice matching the conversation we're having. So if we're talking with someone about something sad or disappointing, our tone of voice may reflect that seriousness of the topic. If we're talking with someone about something that they're really excited about and happy, then our tone of voice, of course, will probably be more animated and more lively. Asking a question, and it came up when somebody came up with this idea that asking questions is a sign of active engagement. We talked a little bit about English learners or target language learners and how they may need a mini lesson on that piece. And the way that we would know that is maybe we could ask a question that was a little bit more specific question to that idea. And as a teacher who's writing on this chart, say something like, what are some question words that people might begin their questions with if they wanted to ask a question? And we can formatively assess our whole group and see how comfortable they are with forming questions by just that simple question that we just asked. And then if they are not able to come up with those question words, or not all of them, we might know that that's a mini lesson that we could do in language at another time. Another thing that, another idea people came up with was clarifying ideas, making them clearer. And again, we could ask students, okay, what are some ways that we can, what are some phrases or sentences that we could say to help people know that we need help clarifying ideas and making them clearer? And so then we came up with, please repeat that, and can you give me another example? And again, we can add some more paper at the bottom so that we can generate some more ideas as the days go by. So again, this is the T-chart for social skills. So how is this T-chart culturally responsive education? Why might we want to do this? How could it benefit English learners? What does it have to do with language learning? It engages students in the conversation about class norms. And for students who have different experiences, who may come from different levels of schooling, different schooling experiences, we might have a highly mobile population of students who've come and gone from one class to another at different schools. It really allows us as a class and a class community to generate some norms together. It engages students' voices in the process. Instead of a teacher just rolling out the rules on the first few days of school and saying, these are my rules, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, you should not do this. Instead of having it be this, the teacher is in this authoritarian type role, it becomes a conversation with teachers and students to create these norms together. And as I was saying, this chart, the reason why we don't do this in electronic format generally is because the chart stays on the wall during the whole unit, and it needs to be a visual reference for students. And because we generated the ideas with students, students are more likely to find meaning in this chart and be able to interpret it in a way that is helpful to them and helps them to build on their social skills and really focus on practicing these concrete ways of showing active engagement or whatever social skill we're working on. So GLAD says it levels the playing field. It levels the playing field for students because it teaches all students the rules for the social skill that we're practicing for that time. If we have table teams, which GLAD also promotes, then when students get together and do cooperative activities in their team, the teacher is observing for this social skill happening with a pair, a partner, or a team. And because when students show evidences that are on our chart, then the teacher often revisits the chart and reinforces that what they've seen. For example, let's say that teams are in a group for 15 minutes working, the teacher's observing as they're walking around and interacting with teams. And at the end of that, when we do a debrief, then the teacher might say, green team has earned 2 points because I saw people in their team as they were working together paraphrasing back to each other what they heard each other say. And it seemed like that helped their work together to go more smoothly, people seem to understand each other better. And so the teacher's going to reinforce the practice of this skill by referring back to the chart and the concrete examples that they see on the chart. In that way, you can see why students might think of additional ideas to add onto the chart later, because as they practice the social skill, there may be things that they're doing in their groups to show active engagement, which they have not listed on the chart, but they have their good ideas and their reasons for positive reinforcement. So then they will want to add those things onto the chart, which will benefit the whole group, and then they will be able to earn more points as well for their team, which students in elementary school, especially upper elementary, really enjoy that aspect of it. So, all right, that's the T-chart for social skills from GLAD.